Aloha, everyone. My name is Jonathan DePotter, and I'm the founder of Behold Retreats. What I have to share with you today is for leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs. And we're going to talk about how to elevate your consciousness and transform your life with plant medicine, and how to avoid the common mistakes. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of mistakes happening out there with plant medicine, and so through this presentation, hope to be of some service to you, tell you how to avoid those mistakes, how to accelerate your growth with plant medicine, and ultimately how to improve the quality of everyday life. So we're still early in our journey with Behold Retreats. We launched in July last year, and we're grateful for the recognition we've received from a broad variety of media for the leadership and innovation that we're bringing to plant medicine. Most recently, we were pleased to receive the award as runner-up for Best Wellness Program of the Year 2020 from Destination Deluxe. More importantly, it's been great to see the success stories and breakthroughs come from our clients. And Vanessa here from Hong Kong, she shared that I highly recommend it for anyone who is looking to improve their lives or is curious to uncover the deeper levels of our consciousness through a grounded, no-nonsense, practical approach. Thank you, Behold, for this wonderful and unique experience. From Greg, who lives in California, he said, this was my first experience working with healing psychedelics, and while I was initially pensive, the Behold team put me at ease. They really helped us prepare for an experience to be able to bring home lessons that will hopefully last a lifetime. You can expect your retreat to be safe, well considered, and that you will be cared for throughout the process. You're in good hands. And finally, Lynn, who said that they, Behold, provided practical exercises for us to ground ourselves, refine our intentions, and enjoy the experience throughout. Meditation, Qigong, breathwork, and nature appreciation. Conversations flowed naturally in and out of the sessions, and through the retreat, I gained a deeper appreciation for all that I have and the complex simplicity and beauty of life. Cliche as it may sound, these realizations sunk into my heart and mind as never before, and I also felt some energy blockages removed and that my qi now flows more freely. Now, these testimonials are available in full on our website, and it's been interesting because the majority of the clients that we've been supporting have actually elected to remain private and confidential, which we've had to respect, of course. And so we're just in the middle of getting some video testimonials completed. So we should have those available for our next recording shortly here. More broadly, we're in a really exciting time for plant medicine and psychedelic science, and I think it's fair to say that we've entered a real new era for human well-being and performance. We've got groundbreaking research from the likes of NYU, Harvard, Imperial College in London, Yale, CIIS, the California Institute of Integral Studies, and perhaps most importantly from Johns Hopkins and the great work that they're doing at the Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. And so through this great work, we now have decades of evidence for the safety and also the life-changing benefits of this ancient tradition that has now found its way back into the modern Western world. And it's showing us, its incredible possibilities to unlock human potential and also to accelerate individual transformation. So while we have these incredible results from decades of science, it's worth recognizing that we're still early in our exploration and our understanding of consciousness, which I think really represents the intersection between science and spirituality. Results from one Johns Hopkins study, which was with synthetic psilocybin. In that study, about 50% of the participants rated their experience as the single most personally and spiritually significant of their lives. Over 90% from that same study rated the experiences amongst their top 5. What's interesting about these studies is the commonality of a full mystical experience, even for those people who are not religious. And so we've got a pretty broad range of groundbreaking results that evidence that these are incredible tools. Plant medicine is an incredible tool for addressing mental health challenges. Unfortunately, we focus the majority of the efforts there so far, and we've got a little bit of an unhelpful paradigm in my mind where, in the Western world, we tend to make a distinction between the well and the unwell. So we've kind of set this bar at a bit of a subjective level, and anyone that's kind of below that bar has got a mental health problem, and anyone who's above that bar is doing totally fine and has nothing to worry about. Whereas I think the practical reality is that we can all work on elevating our consciousness and thereby improving our mental health. And that's a lifelong pursuit that can and should be a priority for all of us throughout our lives. It's also worth mentioning that we're still at the very early stages here, and there's still much research to be done, and there's a lot of pieces that are just beginning to be explored now. So it's generally recognized that ayahuasca, which is a plant medicine brew from Central and South America, is more powerful even than psilocybin, which along with MDMA has been the primary focus of the studies to date. However, ayahuasca is considerably more difficult to study. It's got 463 compounds in it, right? So it doesn't really quite fit our Western medical model, whereby we have a preference, or shall we say an obsession with compound isolation, which allows us to control for variables and control for dosage. So we typically are looking for that single magic molecule, and this is exactly what we see happening in cannabis, etc., where they're separating out the cannabinoids from the THC and doing things with each of these plants, trying to find what the silver bullet molecule is for a given problem to be solved, as it were. But ayahuasca clearly has a very broad range of benefits to the body, and I think the human body is so complex that when you combine, say, 463 compounds with the human body, there's clearly a lot more going on there that makes it very difficult to study under the classic Western medical model. Research on ayahuasca and DMT more broadly is very much still in its infancy, and it's very much expected that the results in this space will be even more groundbreaking, as the medicine itself is generally recognized to be more powerful. DMT is often described as the spirit molecule, and rightly so. Another piece of evidence for the fact that we're only at the beginning of our understanding here is that there continues to be new psychedelic research centers that are opening up. Most recently, there was one from the very well-known Berkeley, and just this week or last week, Mount Sinai in New York also announced that they're opening up a psychedelic research center. So we are also now doing a lot more research on the benefits for the well, which is our focus for today, which is exciting because, yes, while it's exciting that, plant medicine can help people who are suffering, of course, we don't want anyone to be suffering in this world. We also want to be improving consciousness and outcomes for people who are well. And so that also represents a very exciting opportunity. Now, what's happening in the brain during a plant medicine experience is a question I often get from our clients and from my friends as well. And what this image here represents is, on the left-hand side, the brain under a placebo, and on the right-hand side, the picture of the brain being scanned while it's under the influence of psilocybin. Now, the circles on the outside of the circle represent the different regions of the brain. And then each of the lines represent the information exchange between the various regions of the brain. And then the thickness of the lines represent the amount of information being exchanged between the different regions of the brain. So you can clearly see that on the right-hand side, there's a massive amount of information exchange between pretty much all regions of the brain. Now, what's interesting about that is if you scan a Western brain, someone from the modern Western world, you see something that looks more like, the picture on the left. If you scan a Buddhist monk who has, decades and decades of meditation practice, you will often see an image that looks more like the picture on the right. So there's a much greater neuroplasticity and cohesion across the brain, whereas it seems like in the West we need a little bit more of a defragmentation of our compartmentalized brain. So what's happening here exactly? So plant medicine promotes neurogenesis, which is the growth of new neurons and also establishing new neuronal connections, which, as I said before, kind of facilitates that information exchange and reconciliation between the various regions of the brain, and kind of actually begins to decompartmentalize the brain. It's what often can arise from people doing this work is that they come to recognize where they have incongruent thoughts within their brain. One example I often give of that is, if you've got a guy who says that he loves his wife and at the same time he's not faithful to his wife, then those are two thoughts that are compartmentalized in different parts of the brain. In a healthy brain, in a coherent brain, those two thoughts will not coexist. And so again, that's just one example of compartmentalized thinking that, when people have a plant medicine experience, these sorts of incongruencies tend to come to the fore to allow for reconciliation of sorts. Now, this neurogenesis is very much believed, and this information exchange is believed to be at the core of why plant medicine has sustained benefits for individuals. It's kind of healing the brain at the level of the organ. It's also to be said that the science here is not fully understood, and there's a lot more research going into it. I've also heard from a close friend of mine who previously studied this topic at one of the top universities that I mentioned before, that there's actually some research and evidence coming out to provide a scientific foundation for the fact that it's not that these plants do interesting things to our brains, but rather that our brains are as interesting as they are as a result of these plants. So what that means is that potentially our brains actually co-evolved alongside these plants, and that these plants are actually in large part responsible for the explosion of growth in our prefrontal cortex that we've seen over the past 200,000 years. So I'm told that's coming out either later this year, 2021, or early 2022. And I think if that does, if there is some evidence for that, I think it'll be pretty groundbreaking, and we'll see a very radical acceleration and shift in terms of the associations and also the progress in terms of the legalization and decriminalization movements that we're seeing globally. This theory is called the stoned ape theory, or Paul Stamets, he prefers to call it the stoned ape hypothesis, because he sees that there isn't any super compelling evidence for it out there today. And there's a really compelling video and well animated video that I'll link to in the notes that you can see if you're interested. Otherwise, you can just YouTube for it, stoned ape theory. Moving right along. People often ask me, okay, I understand there's a whole bunch happening in the brain, but why on earth would I want to go through that? Why would I benefit from such an experience? And I think there's three underlying reasons that the majority of us can actually benefit from one of these types of experiences. The first is to overcome past trauma and limiting beliefs that we have that are stifling our growth. So unfortunately, I guess I think it's partially as a result of the evolution of mankind. We have this unfortunate dynamic where it seems like past generations have been traumatized, and that's often referred to as intergenerational trauma. And this intergenerational trauma is being passed on generation by generation, and so this affects nearly everyone, even those who are privileged and grew up with otherwise relatively fancy-free childhoods, and even relatively seemingly small incidents can actually have quite a profound impact upon the development of a child. So one of the examples I sometimes give is, if you can imagine, a child and her mother coming home at the end of a long day, and maybe mom's had a bad day at work, she was stuck in traffic, didn't sleep very well the night before, and 5-year-old child is carrying in some groceries for mom. And on the way into the house, she happens to drop those groceries and spill some things out onto the floor. And in that moment, mom being tired and not at her best, she loses her patience, and she says to the child, you never get anything right, just get out of the way, I'll deal with it. And so, the child at age 5, we don't have the ability to distinguish between that which should take hold in our subconscious and that which is just mom at the end of a bad day. And so for the child, this can take hold in the subconscious. And so perhaps the next day the child is playing with friends at school and receives the ball, and in that moment she remembers, oh, you never get anything right. It comes from the subconscious. You never get anything right. Just get it out of the way. Now, I think you can appreciate, if that pattern, if that thinking is playing over and over again to the child in relation to how life unfolds for them, that can set them on a fundamentally different path, right? And that's just a very minor transgression, if we could even describe it as that. And of course, children bear witness to much worse than that all around the world. And so, honestly speaking, it's incredible the power of the brain to suppress and repress these experiences. I myself, super lucky. I had very loving, caring parents, and yet as I started working with plant medicine, I came to recognize that yes, indeed, me also. I had childhood experiences that I had suppressed. So my brain had accurately recognized those experiences as traumatic, and as a result of that, kind of hidden it away from my everyday consciousness. Now, these experiences, you might think, well, why would I want to go and uncover that? Those experiences, those traumatic experiences, they do manifest in our everyday character, right? Whether that's frustration or lack of patience or anger. And so once I had personally kind of uncovered and discovered and reconciled and accepted that experience, I immediately felt 20 or 30 pounds lighter. And I don't get angry or frustrated like I used to, and I never really used to understand why it was that I had some frustration so commonly within me, and that was a large part of it. So that's number one, to overcome those past traumatic experiences that know it or don't know it. In all likelihood, we all had some of those experiences earlier in life. Now, the second reason is in relation to what's described as the default mode network. Now, the default mode network is a network of the brain that is responsible and active when you are thinking about yourself, when you're thinking about others, when you're thinking about the future, and when you're thinking about the past. Now, modulation of this default mode network is, as we come to learn how to modulate our default mode network, there are so many benefits to overall quality of life. There's great research out there, and I'll link to another great YouTube video by Gary Weber, who goes much more in depth about the default mode network and the end of human suffering, which is just fantastic. And what the research shows is that the overwhelming majority of us have the same thoughts on loop over and over and over again. And they're all about I, me, and my. So they're all reflexive thoughts that are, relatively compulsive and obsessive. And often they're not saying very nice things about ourselves, right? That we're not good enough, we're not doing enough, we should be doing more, we should be this, we should be that. And so by virtue of dampening down the default mode network, downregulating the default mode network, we can really begin to become more aware, reduce, and even stop those unhelpful thinking patterns. Now, plant medicine downregulates the default mode network, and it can really show us another state of being, which is so much more peaceful than kind of the constant compulsive thinking. Now, it's quite common as people begin to explore plant medicine that they also begin to take a meditation practice more seriously. And so through that process and those things together, they're able to really quite rapidly reduce the amount of unhelpful thinking. And I think, this dynamic is really at the core of the quote that we all know and love, which is that the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. If you are, second to your mind and identify wholly and entirely with your mind, it's not a nice place to be. And I think, we all have elements of that within us. So that's the second component in relation to why people can benefit. The third is that, honestly speaking, our brains are overwhelmed by the complexity of modern life. There's just so much going on in our personal and professional lives that, our thinking minds are really struggling to manage that complexity that we all face. And so as a result of that complexity, almost as a sort of kind of energy efficient mechanism, our brains have started taking shortcuts in our thinking as an adaptive response, right? And so you can kind of think of this as taking a kind of mental shortcut in our thinking. But the side effect of that is that our thinking becomes overly patterned, right? And that's a little bit about, that relates a little bit to what we just spoke about in the default mode network. We've got these typically unhelpful patterns of the mind, and we've got a massive overuse of a small subset of our neural pathways at the expense of the greater whole. And so to some extent our thinking has even become deterministic. And the example that I sometimes give here is that we all know someone in life where if you were to present them with some new piece of information, you actually already know how they're going to respond to that information, even though you haven't told them the information yet. And so, that's such a tragedy. It's a loss of neuroplasticity. It's a loss of this amazing thing that we've got that's called the brain. And so, again, through a plant medicine experience and this kind of defragmentation, decompartmentalization here that you can see in this picture, we can begin to undo some of that damage to the software of the brain and begin to use more of our neural pathways, which is and regain our neuroplasticity, which is super important to our overall health and well-being. Now, the last piece that I'll mention here is that, you may have heard this quote before, but the mind thinks, but the heart knows. And so being able to tap into guidance from the heart as opposed to the mind often enables us to transcend a lot of that complexity. And, there's a part of me that cringes a little bit when I say that, because, thinking from the heart is something that my mother would have said when I was growing up. I come from quite alternative parents, and, I was like, what are you guys talking about? But, now that I've done more of my work with plant medicine, it's incredible the power of the heart to tap into intuition and wisdom, which is so much more powerful and deep than that of the overactive mind, certainly. Now, what are the benefits from plant medicine? These are the benefits that have been proven out by science. I think there's still a lot more coming in relation to physical health in particular. But definitely we are seeing improvements to well-being, to self-care, relationships, and purpose and belonging. So in terms of well-being, proven improvements to cognition, clarity of thinking, mood, behavior, and consciousness. In terms of self-care, certainly an improved self-understanding, which is, by and large, it's the same thing as consciousness. The ability to put the past behind us and for a lot of people, that's obviously very helpful. And as we spoke about, not be too future-oriented as well. And then also just being more motivated to care for yourself, right? So whether that's emotionally, physically, or spiritually, and to begin to align, the mind, body, heart, and spirit in such a way that it's much easier to care for yourself. You don't have to use your willpower to make healthy choices. They just come from within, which is it's a very, I think, natural and fulfilling place once we elevate our consciousness. In terms of relationships, greater empathy and more love for others, and also the ability to overcome triggers, right? We all have those people in our lives that are able to trigger us. And so to be able to spot those triggers and avoid the reactive response and actually process emotions as they arise so that we are more responsive in our approach. And as a result of that, really able to improve our relationships and also our sense of kind of social connectedness. Now, what's been interesting about the research that's been done in relation to these benefits is that not only have these benefits been reported by the individual, but they've also been reported by the friends and family that are close to the subject. So not only are the benefits being felt by the individual, but the broader community around them, which is pretty compelling. Now, last but not least, purpose and belonging. So through plant medicine, it's quite common for people to really feel an enhanced sense of clarity and purpose for themselves, which is a beautiful thing, and also a sense of belonging to and of the world. So really kind of feeling like you're part of a whole, which again is is something that I never felt for many years, and now very much do, thanks to the work that I've been doing with plant medicine. And finally, increased motivation to care for the planet. I think we're all interconnected here on this beautiful ecosystem, and so as more people elevate their consciousness and gain a greater desire to care for the planet, that's a nice benefit as well. So, who is this for? So again, what we're offering here today is really for leaders, for executives, for entrepreneurs who want to be operating at their best and want to have an impact on the world. So leaders that want to be more authentic, that want to be more intuitive, that really want to take their leadership skills to the next level, and to be able to be more peaceful, more joyful, and more loving in their leadership style. This is for executives who want to, level up their boardroom presence, and who want to be, take their leadership to another level as well, and also to be able to have more free time to spend with friends and family. And finally, for entrepreneurs who are, they often have put a heavy load on their shoulders, and they are looking for clarity personally and professionally, to be able to bring their vision into the world, and also to be able to balance the many balls that they're often juggling between personally and professionally. And again, I think that applies to all leaders. Now, these groups definitely have a lot in common in terms of their being accustomed to managing a high degree of complexity. Often they are rational people, right? We're motivated to improve things, to find the best solution, and also to be successful in execution. Leaders are measured on results and their ability to lead teams to execute on those results. However, being driven kind of carries an associated cost, right? Certainly to personal life, and often to mental health as well. And it really doesn't need to be this way. And so that's the subject for today's presentation. And we're about to get more into the details there in a minute. Forbes recently published that 72% of entrepreneurs are affected by mental health challenges, and there's a link there to creativity as well, which is quite interesting. I'll link this article here in the notes, because I think you'll enjoy reading it. And I think again it's worth recognizing that leaders and executives find themselves under similar pressure. In 2020 in particular, it's been a very challenging year. There's been a lot of changes to customer behavior. A lot of us have been remote working. There's been big acceleration on digitization program, changes to teams, downsizing, etc. And so leaders having to navigate the manifold changes, what's often described as the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. I think 2020 was really unparalleled in that sense. And so, leaders are looking for a little bit of renewal. They're looking for a little bit of a reset. And so, again, I think plant medicine can play such a role there. Now, despite their career success, leaders are facing common sets of challenges. Often they're ready for deeper purpose, right? Where they've climbed up the ranks perhaps in their career, and they've made a name for themselves, but they're looking for something deeper, something more meaningful, the path of the heart, as I've had it described to me before, which I think is a beautiful way to describe it. And so, plant medicine can certainly help you through that transition and through that shift. In need of a breakthrough, there's a lot of times leaders feel a little bit stuck, like they've plateaued in their growth, or that there's this kind of inner turmoil that they don't know quite how to resolve. Overthinking, which we've spoken about already, or comparing yourself to others, that's super toxic. And I think, in particular, this kind of compulsive comparison that we all have is what's driving a lot of the unhappiness. And so being able to detach from that can really lead to some significant benefits to quality of everyday life. Limiting beliefs. We often have patterned behavior and patterned beliefs that are difficult to see for what they are. And so we can experience, negative thinking, judgments, feelings of scarcity, or lower level emotions like pride, envy, fear, desire, or frustration. And so being able to overcome those is super valuable. Patterns of thinking and behavior we've spoken about. It's common to have unhealthy relationships with food, with alcohol, drugs that don't benefit, porn, media, technology use, etc. And certainly these can result in suboptimal health for physical health as well as mental health. And finally, it's also common to feel a little disconnected, either from the loved ones that you have that are near and dear to you, from yourself, or that you're not able to attract what you want in life. And so you're feeling kind of disconnected from the broader world because you're not able to attract what you want. And all of these things are completely normal. They're a function of the egoic mind, right? It's over-identification with the mind. And there's any number of modalities out there today, whether that be self-help books or therapy, counseling, coaching, attending leadership seminars, all of these sorts of things. Certainly they can help. And I've participated and been a part of and gone down the rabbit hole on pretty much each and every one of those modalities. But honestly speaking, self-discovery and contemplative practices, even with or without plant medicine, are certainly far more productive in terms of unlocking the understanding that would allow us to release these limiting factors in our lives. So our key message is this, that as a leader, your potential is exponential. And with plant medicine, it is really possible to break through, elevate consciousness, accelerate your personal growth, and make significant improvements to quality of life. Unfortunately, the majority of benefits from plant medicine are being missed or lost because it's difficult to know what good looks like and challenging to find the right guidance. The whole retreats are dedicated to providing expert guidance to facilitate leaders through a successful transformation. So to set the context for that, I'll share a little bit about my background and personal story. I grew up in Hawaii, where I was surrounded by a lot of, shall we say, substances. And so personally, I never felt attracted to it. I always saw kind of a little bit of the darker side of substances growing up there in Hawaii, and I never felt attracted to it, honestly. So I always had a high degree of skepticism that anything good could come from substances. But as I kind of progressed through my career, and 5 years ago I was working in Hong Kong as a management consultant, a strategy consultant for Accenture. Objectively, I had a great life. I had a loving girlfriend. I had great friends. I was having a lot of fun, and I was leading a big team. Thanks to my mentors who kind of paved the path for me. I was leading a team of about 120 plus consultants there at Accenture. And so, even though I had a great life, I fundamentally I felt like there was something missing. I just didn't know what it was, and so. I went looking. I didn't know what I was looking for at the time, but I took a year off. And as part of that year, I basically traveled through South America and was joined by a few friends in Peru. And we decided to participate in an ayahuasca retreat there in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And honestly speaking, I went into that experience a little bit impatient. 5 years in Hong Kong will do that to anyone. I went into that an atheist, and I went into that with a little bit of a high and mighty view of myself, perhaps. And so one of our advisors describes ayahuasca as humble soup, which I think is a perfectly accurate description. And so for my first experience, honestly speaking, I wasn't prepared. I was completely overwhelmed by the experience as well. I was well physically cared for, but I now recognize that I wasn't well spiritually cared for. And it's not because these people weren't trying to do the retreat center, weren't trying to do the very best work. It's that it's very difficult to do this work at a high level, which took me many years to understand, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that shortly. So, and then, again, I had so many breakthroughs. I had so many life lessons, if you will, during the retreat experience. But unfortunately, about a month later, I was back to square one. So I kind of reverted back to all of my thinking patterns, my moods, and my behaviors from pre-retreat. pre-retreat self. I've spent literally decades becoming that person from before the retreat, and so it's very easy to slip back into those same patterns. And over the years, having spoken with friends and subsequently now clients, I see how common that is, how easy it is to slip back into those old patterns. And so as I came to understand that and see how many unmet needs there are in the plant medicine space, I began to host retreats for friends and begin to guide them towards more high quality experiences. And over those first 3.5 years working with plant medicine, I had attended probably 8 to 10 retreats around the globe, a number of the better recognized retreat centers. And I thought, honestly, I thought I was making great progress in terms of my personal development. I felt like I had more patience, more empathy. I was a better leader for my team. At that point, I had returned to the corporate world to do more consulting, and so through that process, began to host more retreats for friends in my broader network. And yeah, I was slowly researching and understanding more about plant medicine, making sure that friends were also having similar sorts of breakthroughs in the lead up to making a transition into this work. Now, about 3.5 years into that journey, I was lucky enough to come across plant medicine experts who really knew what they were doing. And it's almost impossible to compare the quality of work that these people were doing relative to the 8 to 10 retreats that I had previously been on. And so I made more progress working with them in just the space of a couple weeks than I had in the 3.5 years prior. And I was really able to just have breakthrough after breakthrough working with them. And what I came to recognize is a few different things. One, there's a few different types of people working in the space, and very few. It's a massive supply problem that we have in terms of people who are doing this work at the highest level. And I also came to recognize that people are skipping a lot of the mental and emotional work. And so as a result of that, they're kind of landing back where they were because, the ego is super sneaky, mine included. And so, your brain can take you into these places, or the plant medicine can take you into these experiences where you're having this really transcendent sort of experience. And then you come back out of that. And over the course of a week or so, you just go back to exactly where you were before. So you haven't managed to sustain an elevated level of consciousness. You've kind of blasted up and gone, to a much higher level of consciousness, and then you've landed back exactly where you were. So as I began working with these experts, it really redoubled my motivation to guide others to really exceptional experiences, and most importantly, to avoid my years of mistakes that were, I think, I now understand they're completely unnecessary, and that you can make a massive amount of progress in a short amount of time if you have the right guidance, if you're working with experts, and if you're doing the associated mental and emotional work so that you can have breakthrough after breakthrough. So as I came to recognize that, as more and more people became interested in plant medicine, this is really what led me to launching Behold Retreats. So let's dive into it now. What I really want to share with you guys today is how to elevate your consciousness and transform your life with plant medicine. I'm going to share with you this in 4 different parts. The first is understanding and achieving your potential, and this is specifically in relation to consciousness. I'm not going to tell you how to do PowerPoint or Excel or anything of that sort. That's already available on YouTube. The second is our evolution from egocentricity to holism, and I think this really does represent the next logical step in our human evolution, and it's much needed given where we find ourselves collectively at this particular juncture. Number 3, how to get the most out of a plant medicine retreat. And even if you're not working with Behold Retreats, hopefully there's some pointers here that you guys can take to heart and help you accelerate your growth. And then finally, and I think most importantly as it relates to working with plant medicine, how to avoid those common mistakes. And I think, unfortunately, if I was to guess, I think 95% of the potential benefits of plant medicine are being lost today, and that's predominantly because people are not avoiding these common mistakes. So I look forward to taking you guys through that so that you can avoid the years of mistakes that I have made. Now, I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about the levels of consciousness and the associated emotions, which I think are really fundamental to understanding and achieving our potential. Now, the levels of consciousness is something that we all instinctively understand. For we all have, say, friends and family members who around us who are perhaps operating at a higher level of consciousness. We have friends and family members maybe that are operating at a lower level of consciousness. Maybe people even in the workplace that could be higher or lower. It's something that we instinctively understand because to a great extent, it helps us decide who we enjoy spending time with and who we don't enjoy spending time with. So, for some of us, we spend time with someone with a higher level of consciousness. It's very energizing, motivating. Other times we spend people who are stuck in apathy or guilt or shame, some of those lower level emotions. And even if we love and care for them, it can be quite draining to spend a lot of time with them. And then sometimes, if there's a massive gap in consciousness between you and someone else, it can also feel a little bit threatening, honestly, that they are so much more, spiritually advanced, or their understanding of the world is so much more than what we have, that it's like, oh wow, like that can feel a little bit threatening sometimes. But anyway, so before we jump into this in greater detail, I'd like to start by defining consciousness a little bit. So consciousness, as we're going to define it here, is our awareness and our understanding of ourselves, and as a result of that, our understanding of the universe. Now, the CIA actually describes the nature of the universe as holographic. And again, I'll link to the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, yes, that's CIA, paper. It's on their website, and it's quite an interesting read. They describe the nature of the universe as holographic, which means that the whole is made of the part, and the part is made of the whole. And the 13th century poet Rumi has a really beautiful quote, which I think summarizes nicely, which is that you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And so what that's describing is that through discovery of ourselves, through introspection, through whether that be meditative practices and or working with plant medicine, by virtue of understanding ourselves, we also come to understand the whole universe, and equally the relationship between ourselves and the universe. And so when we talk about a higher level of consciousness, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about to what extent do you understand yourself, and as a result of that, to what extent do you understand the universe, and then how do you actually relate to the universe as a result of your own self-understanding. So hopefully that makes some sense. Now, some of the most profound work in relation to this space has been done by Dr. David Hawkins. It's incredible. For me, he's been such an incredible mentor and spiritual teacher. He's got about 15 or 20 books that are published. Highly recommend the books Letting Go, as well as The Map of Consciousness Explained, and another called Power versus Force. All three of those are just incredible reads. And what his work shows is that we all exhibit a range of emotions, but we also have a persistent state of being, or persistent kind of emotional level, or level of consciousness, as it were. And now, what we can see from his work is that those of us who are stuck in the lower emotions, which might be shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, we are generally experiencing inaction. There's a relationship between our emotional state and what we experience in the world and from the world. And so when we're in inaction, we're stuck in kind of a quote unquote victim story, and we don't feel like engaging very much with the world. Now, in modern times, of course, this is typically diagnosed as depression. Now, moving up from there, we into the emotions of desire or anger or pride, which is unfortunately where a lot of us are operating in the world today. We experience hyperactivity, which again could be diagnosed to some extent as anxiety. And so often what people experience in this state is, the mind is super overactive, thinking about 1,001 things it needs to do, to achieve, to have. It's constantly thinking of things to want, comparing itself to other people, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a really hyperactive state of being. And as we move up from there into the emotions of courage, neutrality, willingness, and acceptance, we begin to experience more kind of happiness and productivity. Now, a large majority of people who place themselves here in this range of kind of happiness and productivity, often we don't know that we've actually got these lower level emotions of guilt and shame or fear that are actually bringing our overall emotional state down to a lower level, which is why I think plant medicine again is so powerful to provide us access to that subconscious, so that we can begin to uncover those things. Now, when Dr. David Hawkins did his work, he said that roughly 85% of the population or more was actually in hyperactivity or inaction, which is kind of the below 200, which is the inflection point between truth and falsehood. So below 200, we tend to experience more negativity of mind, and we tend to be more contracted in our emotional state. Above 200, we tend to be more positive, more expansive. We're thinking more broadly, and tend to be, of course, a little bit more upbeat on life. As we break through 200, it's much easier for us to actually continue to elevate our levels of consciousness. And equally, when we're below 200, it's easy to spiral back down because we've got those negative patterns of mind. Now, moving up to the level of 400 to 500, which is the highest level of kind of rationality described as reason, that's where we experience peak performance without stress. And so any scientific luminaries, whether that be Newton or Einstein, those people who are operating at a very high level from a rational perspective, typically we will find them within this sort of a range. And so often they are leaders in their field that are producing a lot of information and documentation, and as a result of that, well recognized in their field. Now, the transition, the inflection point above reason is really a complete paradigm shift, right? And it's often reason that can actually keep people from making this shift from the rational into the synchronistic and the extraordinary, the exponential, and ultimately the spiritual. So when we move above 500 is generally when we have these experiences like universal love or the interconnectivity of all things or God consciousness. And these are experiences, mystical experiences, spiritual experiences that, are, honestly speaking, they're ineffable, because it's just, we don't have common language to be able to reduce those in such a way that, to be able to communicate them adequately. They are such profound and, unbelievable and exquisite experiences that, it just boggles the mind. Typically speaking, it's the complete ego dissolution where there's a complete merging between mind, body, heart, and soul and the entire universe, and we cease to exist in our natural egoic state. And so, that's really where it is that we would like to be guiding a lot of our clients is up through reason and into the transcendence of the egoic mind, because there's just incredible potential for human performance when we're operating from that level on a sustained basis. So not only do we want to have this experience while we're on retreat with plant medicine, we actually want that to be our stable state of consciousness. And this is what mystical and spiritual leaders have been telling us for millennia, that we should, like Socrates said, know thyself, like Gandhi said, be the change. All of these spiritual leaders were really telling us to look within, because all of the answers are there for us if we have the courage and take the time and the energy to really listen to what's coming from the inside. So that's a little bit about the map of consciousness. I've done a longer blog post on this topic because it's an in-depth one in of itself. I plan to do even a longer one to try and consolidate more of the work, but you can find it in our blog under Your Potential is Exponential. Now, I think in summary, what I'm trying to say is that there's a much easier approach to success. That if we do our inner work first and are able to release those lower level emotions and thereby elevate our consciousness, everything in life just becomes easier. We've got a deeper understanding of ourselves. We can be more on purpose. We can be really excited about the work we're doing. If as we elevate our consciousness, we will naturally gravitate towards the path of the heart and something that we're really passionate about doing. And through that process, really be more productive, be happier, be more loving, and more peaceful. I used to feel like honestly speaking, when I was back in Hong Kong working in consulting, I really felt I had this real attachment and to how things were going at work. So if work wasn't going well, then I wasn't going well. And so as I started working with plant medicine, there was a real kind of decoupling that I went through in terms of trying to separate my work life from my personal life, if you will. And so even if things were going really well at work, I could remain equanimous. Anyway, so try to separate those things. And so then if things were going really badly, that I was still, staying in a stable state, even though things weren't going so great at work. Now, as I've launched Behold Retreats, it's been interesting because I've really felt those things begin to converge again. And so there was no requirement to kind of separate my state of being from work and state of being outside of work, because, work has now become play. It's a pleasure. It's a joy. And so, that's something that absolutely everyone should be aspiring to, is for work to be a joy in each day. And so through that, I think it's really possible for all of us to achieve our dreams and to have impact in the world, massive impact in the world, while we're working in a state of flow. And so, if there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, it's, go check out Dr. David Hawkins' work. It's super, super incredible. I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. And, through that, hopefully you might be encouraged to think about elevating your consciousness as a goal for yourself. Now, the second piece in relation to this is around our evolution from egocentricity to holism. So, this is a bit related to what we were just speaking about, but, a different way of speaking about it. So at the moment, we're kind of in a paradigm where most of us are operating from quite an egocentric perspective. And generally, that's an over-identification with the mind. And the underlying belief there is that life is happening to us or life is happening for us. And our motivations is that we fulfill our material ambitions and desires and fulfill societal expectations. And so often that looks like the accumulation of money, of power, of status, and often that comes at the expense of other people, and it comes sometimes at the expense of the planet. And so the experience that comes along with that can be inner turmoil, compulsive thinking, comparing, wanting ceaselessly. And the underlying emotional state is pride, it's envy, it's fear, it's scarcity, which is really not a nice place to be. And unsurprisingly, we're seeing continued growth in mental health problems. We're seeing continued growth in physical health problems. And those are manifesting as a result of that mental sickness, which is lack of fulfillment and a disconnection from the whole. And ultimately what we're seeing is destruction of the planet as well. And I think, plant medicine is a very powerful tool to accelerate this evolution to where we're going, which is really holism, whereby we are taking guidance from not just our minds, but our mind, our body, our heart, and our spirit. And that we understand that life is happening through us, that we are just a channel, and that we are here to evolve ourselves and to fulfill our inner potential so that we can be of greater service to the world. And, a big priority for each of us should be to continue to, reduce our ego and to transcend the egoic mind, so that we're listening not only to our minds, but also to our heart and spirit and to one another, so that we are understanding and adding to the whole, as it were. And through that, we can be experiencing a very different sort of life, where we feel inner contentment, where we have a deeper sense of feeling within our bodies, where we are knowing, we are having, we are enjoying, instead of the negative experiences that we spoke about before in the more egocentric model. And we can be living more in a state of love and joy and peace and abundance, and through that feel a greater sense of health, live in a greater sense of health, where we're connected with ourselves, we're connected with the broader collective, and we're in harmony, or moving in the direction of harmony with our beautiful planet. So number 3, I'm going to speak a little bit about how to get the most out of a plant medicine retreat. So what I commonly see is that people are approaching this topic increasingly casually, which is a bit unfortunate. I think as it grows in popularity and as more people know friends or family members that have participated in plant medicine, it's like, oh yeah, sign me up. And as a result of that, they're perhaps skipping some of the important work. And so What I commonly see is being skipped is number one, skipping expert guidance, either a coach or a therapist, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Skipping the mental emotional work, so you're not able to really identify your blind spots and to set really deep and specific intentions. And number three, skipping high quality preparation and integration work, so not being able to go into a retreat really fully prepared to get the most out of it, and then not committing sufficiently to the integration work after the experience. And as a result of that, what often happens is that, people, they have an experience, that's for sure, but they're not able to identify, let alone release the lower level emotions that we've spoken about before. And so, they might come out of the retreat saying, oh, wow, I had these big breakthroughs, but they're not able to integrate those to really improve the quality of everyday life. And so, again, more commonly than not, what we're seeing is that a lot of people are back to square one after they've had a plant medicine retreat, which is really unfortunate. And so in contrast to that, what I'd really recommend is that make sure that you're working with expert coaches, therapists, and healers who have guided hundreds, if not thousands of people. You really want to take this as an opportunity to define your future self, and to make a clear picture of where you want to be in the future. Not too distant future, right? Not 20 years out, but like, how about a year from now? What's going to be different about you? Set really ambitious goals for yourself, and so that you can use the retreat to really embody that experience and make massive progress over a short space of time. Now, you also want to put a whole bunch of time and place significant emphasis on the preparation, so that you do kind of delve into what those current limiting beliefs are that are holding you back, and committing to integration. Taking say an hour a day once you're back from the retreat to review your breakthroughs and make sure that you're holding yourself accountable to those standards that you set for yourselves. And with that, it's really possible to make massive progress in a short space of time. Like I said to you, I made more progress in a couple of weeks than I did in the 3.5 years prior. So again, trying to really set the bar high for yourself in terms of the amount of progress, the elevation in consciousness that you can achieve in a short space of time, by letting go of those lower level emotions, so that you do naturally come to understand yourself better and come to see yourself as you truly are. And now, one point that I'd emphasize here is that each retreat should serve as a new foundation for meaningful improvements to your quality of life. And that more retreats do not necessarily mean more progress. It's been interesting as we launched Behold Retreats. The customer that I had in mind was actually people who are relatively new to plant medicine, and so it's been really interesting to see a lot of people come through to ask for guidance that have done a lot of plant medicine work, attended hundreds of ceremonies, dozens of retreats, and they still haven't, really had their elevations in consciousness. They haven't had their major breakthroughs. And so for those clients, it's always, there's a part of me that's always a little hesitant, because it's a lot of work to take those sorts of clients on, right? Because they've obviously used this tool to such a great extent and managed to bypass a lot of the complicated and more challenging work. And so they're so used to that to ask them to do something that's so fundamentally different. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, as it were. And so again, I really emphasize to people, focus on how much progress you can make with a single retreat rather than how many retreats you can go on. Now, going to share a little bit about avoiding the common mistakes, and I've touched on a few of these points already, but I hope to go a little bit deeper into them here. So the first is around motivation. I commonly hear now that from clients, oh yeah, had a couple friends that have gone on a retreat, and so I'd really like to go. And then through the course of the conversation, I'm like, okay, so how much do you know about plant medicine? What plant medicine are you motivated to work with? And they're like, oh, I don't know. You just tell me what's best. And it's like, hold on a minute. It's great that more people are motivated to work with plant medicine. That certainly suits our business. But the reality is that we should all take the time and the energy to really understand our own personal motivation for working with plant medicine. So we would really encourage anyone who's thinking about working with plant medicine, take the time, take the energy, do your own research, really understand what this work represents, the types of experiences that are available, the challenges that do arise through this work, so that you can really come into such an experience eyes wide open. Of course, I'm always happy to take the time and the energy to educate clients, but generally speaking, I also turn them away and say, hey, look, it's best that you're speaking to a salesman here, so go away and do some of your own personal research, because that's the best thing to do, so that you can come back and you and I can have a more meaningful conversation about your questions, your doubts, your concerns from the research that you've done. The second and third are related here, which is legality and safety. Very much would encourage people to do this work in a legal setting. That's just absolutely what's best for you. It's peace of mind. It's just generally not worth it. Yes, I think it is fair to say that these plant medicines are gaining legal and social acceptance, which is fantastic. But it's not worth the risk to do this work underground or illegally. So, in relation to that, unfortunately, there's this just massive gap between science and policy, right? So we've got this incredible science, decades of science on the one hand, but on the other hand, the countries where we can do this work legally are completely unregulated, right? And so each individual retreat center is left to their own devices to decide what protocols they put in place for safety, for standards of care, for emergency situations which might arise. They don't, they don't if the medical screening, et cetera, is taken very seriously. But serious circumstances can still arise, and so the reason I share that is it's important to work with retreat centers that have the highest quality of standards for safety and care. I think one of our advisors is actually designed. She's a clinician, and she's designed a very in-depth medical screening so that we can make sure that any contraindications, whether those be psychological or physical or any of the medications that you might be on, are adequately screened for. Now, I'll share with you a funny story. So as she was designing our medical intakes and our medical guidelines, one of the things that she shared with me was that she found that actually in a broad variety of the retreat centers, there was actually 2 medicines in the retreat center's list of contraindicated medicines that were completely fabricated. These were 2 made-up medicines, and they appeared over and over again in a whole bunch of the retreat center's medical screening intake. So I'll follow up with her after this, and I'll get the names of those 2 medicines so you can Google them, and you can see the only place that these 2 medicines ever appear if you Google them is on Ayahuasca Retreat Center's contraindication list. So clearly someone thought they would have some fun and make up a couple medicines to see who was copying their medical intake, and it seems to have somehow propagated across the internet, and propagated across retreat centers. So there we are. So you really want to make sure that people are taking your safety safety is super important in relation to this work. We've spoken about preparation to a great extent. Look, what I often hear from people is that it's hard to take a week, right, and to go and do one of these retreats. So what people often do is they click around. I'm kind of combining 4 and 6 year retreat selection, but they often click around on some different websites. They read a little bit, they read a few reviews, and then through that process they say, okay, looks like a nice retreat center, a few 5-star reviews, I'll book the retreat. And so, then they go back to, they book some flights, and then they go back to their normal lives, which, are, for most of us, remain pretty full. And so it's only in the lead up to the retreat that they finally read through the 26 pages of notes that has been sent out by the retreat center, or they read them on the flights, and so they're not really doing much in the way of preparation in the lead up to a retreat. For anyone who's considering doing this work, I really, really recommend that you invest heavily in the preparation, and that you find an expert guide to help you do that, because you can actually make so much progress during the preparation stage. You can actually begin to release some of those lower level emotions, and so that you can actually make even more progress on your retreat, and your ceremonies will be even more pleasant because you've released some of those lower level emotions ahead of a more amplified experience, which is what happens with plant medicine. So again, that comes back to expert guidance. I've been really pleased to have found expert guidance that was able to help me see my blind spots, which again, the ego is so sneaky and so capable of hiding those blind spots from ourselves that once we've got someone to kind of corner our ego a little bit into looking in the mirror to see some of those spots, it's just so beneficial. And so, yeah, take the time and the energy, speak to people so that you're really confident that you found expert guidance, and don't be shy to ask for reference calls, so that people, you can understand the journeys that others have been on, and you can understand whether or not they've been successful in elevating their state of consciousness, and whether that's led to a really deeply improved quality of life as a result of the guidance that they've received. And again, I hate to throw numbers around, but again, I think the overwhelming majority of people like me have spent years looking at different retreat centers, trying different things, and haven't necessarily found the right guidance to break through. So again, be super careful here. Take the time and the energy, invest to make sure that you're going to find really expert guidance, because you could make more progress on a single retreat with the right guidance than you could in three to 4 years like I did, once you find that appropriate guidance. Now, retreat selection. This is another one that's a little bit tricky. It's really difficult for the untrained eye to know what good looks like. So again, you can go to a retreat center that has 99% positive reviews, really heartfelt retreat center, beautiful property. That doesn't necessarily mean that this work is being done at the highest level. And it's worth recognizing again that we are only at the beginning of plant medicine science, and that there are data platforms that are now emerging which are going to begin to standardize the experiences and the data that's being captured, so that we can really begin to separate those retreat centers that are doing really incredible work at a high level versus those that are, they're doing their best, but perhaps not quite got the level of expertise that we might hope for. And so, again, to the untrained eye, and again, I'll put myself forward as an example that was making mistakes, but I didn't know that I was making mistakes. It's really challenging to know what good looked like. So again, don't be shy of asking for reference calls to make sure that people have had massive breakthroughs and that they're really able to make substantial improvements to quality of everyday life. Again, this is not about the retreats. This is not about the unicorns in the jungle. It's about how much better life can be. And so, if people tell me that they've been on a plant medicine retreat, and then a week later they've experienced God consciousness and had these phenomenal breakthroughs, and then a week later they're flipping off somebody in traffic, there's clearly some sort of gap that's happened there. And so again, find that guidance, find that expert guidance, so that you can really elevate your consciousness and make improvements to everyday life. Number 7, expectations. The death of a good time. Try not to have too many expectations. In doing our research, we can't help but also see, some other people's experiences from this, and often what we come across are some of the most profound experiences, because that's what tends to find its ways into the media channels, right? If possible, don't go looking too much at people's experiences. Go look more at the types of experiences that people can have rather than individual experiences, because that will be more beneficial to you. And yeah, you want to go into this experience, with an open heart and open mind, and bringing your vulnerability, your commitment, your humility, but not having too much in the way of expectations. It's common knowledge these experiences do unfold as they're meant to. And so, for me, for example, the first retreat that I went on with 2 friends, the 3 of us had incredibly different experiences, and yet they were all exactly what they needed to be for the 3 of us. And so again, just try not to have too many expectations. Number 8, working towards goals. This one is a little bit of a balance. So, we go into these retreats hopefully with meaningful intentions in terms of how we want to improve ourselves and our quality of life. But to some extent, we want to let go, right? And to let this experience unfold naturally. At the same time, it's easy to get carried away by the experiences themselves. And, 4 hours later, towards the end of the ceremony, you found, oh shit, I haven't made any progress towards the intentions that I had brought into the ceremony, because it was such an incredible and profound experience. So try to find the right balance, between working towards your goals and allowing the experience to unfold as it should. Number 9, keeping track of the lessons. Again, this is one where you have to find a little bit of a balance, right? I've certainly found in the past where I've had these really transcendent journeys where, I wasn't writing anything down. And then an hour later, after the ceremony's wrapped up, I'm like, oh, I've forgotten so much from the journey already. Now, some people say that that's totally fine. That's how it should be. Other people say, oh, I really wish that I'd written more down so that I could work on the integration process, because I feel like I've lost track of a whole bunch of those lessons now. And so again, there's no hard and fast answer for anyone. It's about finding the right balance. I personally now tend to bring a notebook so that as I have breakthroughs, I do take 3 or 4 seconds and sit up and scribble into my notebook some lessons. Often can be helpful to write a few more words than you were thinking at the time, because often your handwriting isn't the greatest, and sometimes you look back at your words and you go, oh, what on earth did I mean by that? And so you've kind of lost track of the breakthrough in any case. And then number 10, we've spoken about this to some extent already, integrating the lessons, right? Take the time once you're back from a retreat. It's so common for people to end one of these retreats feeling like $1 million, like they've got a new lease on life, super motivated to get back to everyday life. And then, they come back to work, they come back to family, they come back to traffic, they come back to all of those triggers that were surrounding them, and very quickly they revert to their pre-retreat selves. And so make sure that make a daily practice for yourself. Do some meditation, do some breath work, do some stretching, yoga, movement, review your journal, do some journaling in the mornings, so that you can really hold yourself accountable to those changes that you wanted to make to improve the quality of everyday life. You're probably tired of hearing me say that, but that's it. You want to improve the quality of everyday life. Number 11, another retreat. Another common one here is clients come back very quickly. They're like, I'm ready for another retreat. And it's like, okay, but maybe you are. But let's first talk about how much you've improved the quality of everyday life. And so, when clients come back and they're saying, I'm ready for another retreat, but they haven't improved the quality of life, then we really want to look at that. We want to look at what they did during the retreat. We want to look at what they did after the retreat. And we really want to understand what we're going to be doing differently this time, so that they can make sure that they sustain those benefits. And last is dependency. So, these substances are non-addictive. They are safe in the right context, of course. But we definitely see that there are some people who come to use these experiences as a little bit of an escape. And so they, often they're bypassing some of the mental and emotional work. They're not necessarily elevating their consciousness, but they're going back and having more and more plant medicine experiences. And so often that can become a little bit of a dependency, because they are elevating their consciousness, having these sort of transcendent experiences, but it's only on a temporary basis, and then they're landing back where they are. So that's a little bit of a cycle that I've seen some people caught in. So something just to be conscious of as you're all doing your work there. So I know that's a bit to take in, but hopefully that's useful to you guys. Again, just trying to help you guys avoid the mistakes that I've made over the first few years of my work with plant medicine. Now, how you might benefit from working with us, working with Behold Retreats, confidence and safety. You can really be sure that we will eliminate a lot of the guesswork for you. So you will be working with foremost experts. We have the highest quality medical screening. We've got an incredible team of advisors and clinicians and therapists and coaches who, regardless of where you're at in life or what you're looking to achieve, can really guide you in terms of your mental and emotional work and really help you define your future self so that you can get the most out of working with plant medicine. Number 2, we promise that you're going to make massive progress quickly. Like I said, you can spend years of your time going to different retreat centers and trying different things, or you can implement the the kind of what's the word I'm searching for? Implement the tools that I now know work, and you can make massive progress quickly. So elevate your consciousness, accelerate your growth, and make big steps towards fulfilling your potential. when we work together. Elevating your consciousness, you're probably sick and tired of me speaking about that, so I won't repeat myself. And really that requires that we release those lower level emotions, right? And so stepping through those, each of them in turn, trying to understand experiences earlier in life that we may have lower level emotions associated with. We'll give you some tools and some practices, exercises, resources to begin to release those emotions, which will also really help you sustain the benefits and make sure that you can continue your growth after our work together. And then finally, curation and customization, right? So depending on what plant medicine you want to work with, depending upon your specific needs or goals or preferences, you tell us what you're what you're looking to achieve, and we can certainly customize our programs or our retreats in order to fulfill what you are looking to achieve. Now, in terms of how we guide our clients, predominantly do so in two ways. So the first is a 7-week transformation, which is a online program for preparation and integration, 3 weeks each, which are remote. So 3 weeks for preparation before a retreat, a 1 week or a 2 week retreat, and then a 3-week integration period. And that's guided with world-class coaching and individual therapy sessions throughout your journey, so that you can really make the most out of this work. Of course, a beautiful plant medicine retreat in an idyllic location, and the program is made up of lessons and resources, meditations, exercises to really help you get the most out of your plant medicine retreat. And finally, we also provide community membership so that you can exchange what's worked for you, share your experiences, and continue your growth following our work together. The second way that we support clients is through more custom or private transformation. So we provide private and bespoke programs, private retreats, or private group retreats. We do leadership retreats as well for leadership teams that are excited to explore this, not just for individual growth, but for the growth of an organization. And also we can provide specialist coaches and therapists. So if you've got specific things that you're working through, then let us know, and we can pair you up appropriately. Now, spoken about the expert guidance, so sharing with you a few of our team members here. We've got David, who's one of our wellness and plant medicine specialists, Cecile and Misha, who are program facilitators and the exceptional coaches who I'm lucky enough to have stumbled across, because they're the ones who have really guided me to have my series of breakthroughs, and I've continued to see them guide our clients accordingly. And it's just so great to see our clients have major breakthroughs even ahead of the plant medicine retreats themselves, which is super rewarding. Sarah, who leads our practitioners, partnerships, and community. SJ, Sarah Jane, who leads our retreats and customer experience. And then that bald guy there on the end who just tries to be helpful as possible and is a recovering consultant himself. Now, more broadly, we're also supported by a great network of advisors and of course, our team of clinicians and therapists, plant medicine experts, facilitators and healers, spiritual and business mentors, and of course, our operations team, which keeps everything humming smoothly behind the scenes. We have a variety of medicines available, whether that be ayahuasca or psilocybin. San Pedro is also a really great medicine for those of you who may not be aware. Look into it, and we can also provide others by request. So if you've got any specific plant medicines that you'd like to work with, just let us know. And we have retreats available in a broad range of idyllic destinations. So Costa Rica, Jamaica, Mexico, and Peru are our preferred options by our clients in North America. And for those of you that are in Europe or Asia, often our clients prefer to travel to Netherlands, Portugal, or Spain, which are also beautiful places to do this work. Now, in terms of how it works, there's a bit of detail here, but I'll keep it super short. You can pause and look at the detail if you're so inclined. But ultimately, it starts with a phone call. So if you feel like what we're sharing with you today resonates and you'd like us to guide you on your journey, then give us a call, and we can start the alignment process, which is really the first phase where we take the time to understand what you're looking to achieve, and where you're at in life, what past experiences you've had. We share a little bit more about how we work and what a journey might look like in alignment with your goals, and then ultimately you decide whether or not to move forward, and then the journey begins from there. The next phase is preparation. We've spoken plenty about that already, followed by a retreat, followed by the integration phase. And then, of course, if any of our clients require any follow-ups, we provide additional coaching or therapy on an as-needed basis to make sure that we maintain 100% success rates for our clients, which is foremost for us. Now, as you've probably gathered from everything that I've said, even though we are Behold Retreats, this work isn't really about the retreats. It's about improvements to quality of everyday life. But that notwithstanding, people love the retreats. They're profound and life-changing experiences. So I'll share with you a little bit here about a few of the retreats that we have available. And again, this is just a sampling. So let us know what you're looking for, and we can make it happen. We've got a beautiful retreat in Peru in the Sacred Valley, which is just an incredible place to do this work. It's high in the Andes there next to Machu Picchu. And, if you're able to take another week, really recommend doing some hiking around there. Really a magical place to do this work. And there's really great healers in this region as well. So if Peru sounds of interest to you, let us know. There's a really great retreat center in the jungle on the ocean's edge in Costa Rica. The gentleman who leads this retreat is also Jonathan with an O, and he's an incredible ethnobotanist and real man of the plant. So, clients just always rave about their retreat experiences with him. He's got 30 years experience apprenticing under his maestro, who I believe is 102 years old and still practicing today, which is really incredible. Jonathan spends a lot of his time doing conservation work and building water tanks for indigenous communities in Ecuador and Costa Rica. So, it's always great to support the amazing work that he's doing. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of what a retreat schedule kind of looks like, there's 4 ceremonies over the course of a week with Jonathan. He does some really beautiful cleanses and baths and a lot of hiking. Again, he's an ethnobotanist, so he can really connect you with nature, our nature, and a large part of this work is really reconnecting with our true nature and also the natural world around us. So he does some beautiful rainforest walks and ethnobotanical walks, yoga, meditation, art therapy. It's a beautiful spot. I really recommend that one to you if Costa Rica is of interest. We've got a great retreat center in the countryside in Netherlands, which is a great kind of more modern and clean and I suppose it's a less of a jungle experience or kind of pioneering sort of experience than, say, Peru or Costa Rica, but a really beautiful spot. Great for those of you who are more comfortable with a latte machine within 20 feet of your retreat experience, that perhaps this one's the right for you. And whatever feels right. There's some people prefer the full jungle immersion with the mud under the eyes, and that's great and that's beautiful, and the shamanic chanting and all of that. And if that's what people feel attracted to, then beautiful. That's what I personally felt attracted to from my first experience. Others want something more modern, more clinical, and that's also totally fine and beautiful. And so whatever it is that people are looking for is the right thing for them. We did a really exceptional Tulum retreat earlier last year, which was just incredible. 5-bedroom beachfront villa with a saltwater pool and just an incredible spot to do plant medicine work. So if you're interested in a private retreat, Tulum and we've got some beautiful options in Costa Rica as well as Peru, to be honest. But if you're in a position to do this work privately, I highly recommend it. It's just a whole nother world when you've got facilitators and healers that are focused solely on you and elevating your consciousness and helping you with your breakthroughs. So if a private retreat is possible for you, let us know, and we'll make it so. We're also doing a leadership retreat series that starts in April this year, travel permitting, for groups of leaders that want to come together. So this is for executives and entrepreneurs and leaders who are operating at a very high level. So a bit of a networking opportunity and plant medicine retreat around that to really foster leadership skills from within. And so if that's of interest, let us know. Finally, I just would like to wrap this up by sharing you a little bit more about our offer. And then if that sounds interesting to you, let us know, and we can take the conversation forward together. So ultimately what we're offering here is investment in your true self and against your egoic self. And that might be a first for some of you in this world. No more Rolex, no more fancy cars, in investing in reduction of ego. This is personal development that works. Like so many of you, I had tried just about everything from a personal development perspective, and it was really plant medicine that has given me so many breakthrough after breakthrough. So we're offering personal development that works with expert guidance throughout your journey. We're offering a week-long life-changing plant medicine retreat in a beautiful location. And as an introductory offer, sorry, my cat's just trying. Oh, Mr. Caesar. This is Mr. Caesar. He was a stray, but now he's a real lover boy. Aren't you, Caesar? Say hello. Hello. Anyway, so as an introductory offer, our prices are starting at $15K US, and they're going up from there depending upon the retreat that you select and other options therein. Conditions, our prices probably will go up next month, and we are limited to 30 spots at the moment, and that's not because we're trying to create scarcity, but we're still a new and growing company, so we want to make sure that we're maintaining the highest quality of care as we continue to grow. In terms of commitment from you, we need your honesty, we need your humility, we need your vulnerability throughout the process. So the more that you're able to share and be open about what's going on in your life is the more that we're able to help you. And so, for that, we really need probably 3 to 4 hours per week during the 6 weeks of preparation and integration. If you can commit more, then beautiful, fantastic. Like anything in life, you get out what you put in. And during the retreat, we really encourage people to turn off their phones and totally immerse themselves, and to take this opportunity to go deep and do their deep personal work, because it's not easy to take a week, right? And so we don't want to be spending the time juggling Skype calls and checking our calendars and stuff like that. We don't work with narcissists, we don't work with complainers, and we don't work with victims. The reason for that should be relatively self-evident, but if you're stuck in those loops, there are people out there who can help you. There are some great retreat centers. We're not in a position to work with you at the moment. But we wish you the very best. Our guarantee, we do provide a money-back guarantee. So if you don't make massive progress through our program, as we've shared with you today, then simple as that, we provide a refund. This is the spiritual realm. This is the karmic realm, whatever you want to call it. This is not an area where we can really be scamming one another, as it were. And so if you don't feel like you're making massive progress personally, then we provide a refund. Now, next steps. If what we've shared with you today resonates, then click apply for a consultation below, and you'll be speaking with one of our plant medicine experts, or you'll be speaking with me, depending on what time of day you schedule us in for. So to wrap that up, I'm going to answer a few of the questions that I commonly get from our clients, which is, okay, yep, but will this work for me? And generally the answer is yes. As I mentioned before, there are contraindications, right? So we need to screen out those with psychological disorders of a particular variety, psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar. We screen out those that have any physical contraindications or those that could be dangerous. We might then work with a physician so that you can be fully informed in the decision that you make. If you've got any heart conditions or history of stroke, unfortunately, you won't be able to participate in one of our retreats. And then equally, there are certain medications, particularly prescription medications, that are also contraindicated. So if you're on any of those, then again, we'll work that through with you to decide if and how it's within your interest to go on a retreat, potentially to come off your prescription medications. That is one one common motivation is that people are using plant medicine to come off their prescription meds. So we'll work that through with you. Can I do this program in less time? Generally speaking, we would recommend to people that they do take 7 weeks and that they take their time going through this process. When we're working privately, we can accelerate this process. Obviously, there's more time commitment required from your end. Can I do this with friends and family? Absolutely, yes. It's a really beautiful way to connect with your loved ones. I've done this with members of, with my friends, and it's been really a real bonding experience. And actually planning to do this at the next possible juncture with my mother, and really looking forward to that experience. So absolutely, yes. Why are you focused on leaders? Shouldn't everyone have this? Yes, everyone should have this. Unfortunately, we have a real supply problem, right? In terms of people who are experts in this field to be able to guide people to elevate their consciousness. And so we do have a significant team of experts who deserve to be compensated for the really exceptional work that they do. And so we are focused initially on leaders because through that process, we believe that we'll be able to accelerate the conversations around legalization and democratization for plant medicine. And as a result, these experiences will become more available to more people, and that will really unlock further benefits to humanity more broadly. So that's where we're focused on leaders. We hope to be able to serve more in due course. Despite the science and guarantees, I'm still feeling a bit apprehensive and maybe a little bit nervous. Is this normal? Totally normal. Every big adventure should have a little bit of nerves associated with it, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be an adventure as such. And so, personally, I've probably done 30 or 40 ceremonies now, probably closer to 40. And each of the ceremonies, I still have some nerves before the experience. So it's these guys coming back. Caesar. And it's completely normal. We'll talk that through with you. If you weren't feeling some nerves, then I would be more worried than not, to be honest. So completely normal to have some nerves. Can I follow up after COVID has quieted down? Yep, absolutely. I'll mention that our prices will probably go up over time. So you can absolutely start the program now. You will have big shifts ahead of actually the plant medicine retreat. And of course, we'll extend the program so that you have access for a longer period of time, so that as and when travel opens up again and you feel comfortable traveling, that you can do so and also be guided throughout your integration process. And it's been rewarding to see the clients that have come through and started their work on the program even ahead of retreat have those breakthroughs. So now is a good time to start your personal work. This seems expensive. Why? So I think I've answered that, but we've got a significant team that deserves to be compensated for their hard work, and they really put their heart and soul into this, and so there's no reason that shouldn't result in abundance for the beautiful work that they're all doing, and so. That's the reality. What if I don't benefit, as you've described? As I said before, then we provide a refund. Simple as that. I've heard that plant medicine also works for treating more serious mental health disorders and addictions. Is that true? Yes, that is true. Unfortunately, that's not a set of people that we're able to support at this time. But absolutely, there are people out there that do work with plant medicine in these areas, and would encourage you to, again, do your own research to make sure you're finding your way to a really exceptional option. And finally, I have some questions about whether my health condition will allow me to participate. Will you be able to help me? Best thing here is to come through our medical screening process, and we'll help you decide what's in your best interest, whether plant medicine is a good option for you. So it's been an hour and a half now, so thank you and mahalo for listening to me blubber on about plant medicine. Hope you guys have all taken something away from that. I hope that you'll be able to avoid some, if not all, of the mistakes that I've made along my journey, and that as a result, you'll really be able to get more benefits more quickly and elevate your consciousness. And, I think the key to improving the world here is for each of us to continue to work on ourselves. And by virtue of working on ourselves, others will take notice, others will begin to work on themselves. And that's the key to really unlocking the exponential relationship between our own personal development work and encouraging others, and finding out that actually most of the problems in this world are being caused from within, as opposed to some sort of external source, which is so commonly believed to be the case, that the problem is over there somewhere. It's not here. So look inside, see if some of the problems might sit within yourself, within myself, and yeah, through that process, life just becomes so much easier, so much more joyful. And so I'll leave you here with a quote that I really love, which is from none other than Buddha himself, which is that in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. So with that, I wish you all a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and a beautiful 2021 ahead. Big aloha, and thank you for listening.